The neon glow of the interstellar bar blurred as Aria slipped into her seat, her fingers trembling over the holographic interface, ordering a double shot of adrenaline. The air was thick with the scent of synthetic pheromones and the hum of alien whispers, each word a puzzle waiting to be solved. Her eyes darted across the crowded room, scanning faces twisted in laughter or anger, searching for that one figure she couldn't shake from her thoughts. Then it happened, a sudden chill down her spine, as if something or someone was watching her closely. She turned and saw them, an ethereal woman with skin like moonlit silk and eyes that burned with the intensity of a dragon's flame. Aria froze, her pulse racing. It was the same woman she'd noticed in every crowded space since she arrived on Rellora Prime, the bustling heart of the galaxy's black market. "Is there something you want?" Aria asked, forcing her voice to sound confident despite the ice crackling in her veins. The woman's lips curved into a soft smile, revealing pointed canines that hinted at something more than human or even alien. The woman leaned closer, her breath cool against Aria's cheek. "Partnership," she murmured, her voice sultry and commanding. "There's a dance tonight. Will you join me?" Aria blinked, the words swirling in her mind like a maelstrom. "Why me?" she demanded, eyes narrowing as if trying to pierce through the enigmatic veil. "Because you're the key," the woman replied cryptically. "The dance begins at midnight. Be there if you wish to unravel the mystery." Before Aria could ask another question, the woman vanished into the crowd, leaving nothing but a whisper of dark energy and an unshakable presence of power behind her. Aria stared at the empty spot where the woman had been, feeling a mix of fear and exhilaration. The air buzzed with anticipation now that the mystery was in motion, a new layer added to the thick intrigue she already felt surrounding her every step. She downed her drink in one swift gulp, the sharp tang burning her throat as if it were a promise of what was to come. She needed to leave this place and plan, but there was no time. An author voice cut through the chaos, a rough, gravelly sound that sent shivers up her spine. "Hey you, over here!" Aria turned to see an imposing figure looming over her. His skin was a deep shade of blue, scales glinting in the dim light, and his eyes held a predatory gleam. He stepped closer, his presence nearly crushing her into the booth with raw power and intent. "What do you want?" Aria asked again, her tone firm but laced with uncertainty. The man's grin widened, revealing sharp teeth. "I saw your little exchange," he said, voice dripping with menace. "You're not pretending the kiss was real, right?" Aria's heart thumped loudly in her chest. "What are you talking about?" she lied, trying to keep her composure. "You don't want anyone else knowing about tonight's events," he growled, his words heavy with implied threats. "Especially about that dragon woman." She felt his breath against her neck, cold and deliberate. He leaned in closer, his tone dropping to a menacing whisper. "I can make this easier for you. Cooperate, and I might just let you live through the night." Aria forced herself to push away from him, using the edge of the table for leverage. The stranger's eyes narrowed as she stood, but he didn't stop her when she turned to leave, his presence lingering like a dark shadow. As Aria stepped out into the neon-lit streets of Rellora Prime, the city's chaos only deepened her sense of foreboding. The dragon woman's invitation and the strange exchange with the alien predator were just the beginning. Midnight was closing in fast, and she needed to make a decision: join the mysterious dance or face the unknown consequences. But as she walked toward the darkened heart of the city, where the shadows seemed to whisper secrets of their own, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being pulled into something far larger than herself. She wondered if it had always been there, hidden beneath layers of everyday life, waiting for just the right moment to surface. For Aria, that moment was no, and with each step, the tension mounted like a storm building on the horizon, ready to unleash its fury at any second. The dance was an enigma, and Aria was about to step into the center of it, whether she liked it or not. The city's skyline pulsed with neon lights and holographic advertisements as Aria approached the grand hall where the night's mysterious event would take place. The air crackled with anticipation, charged by whispers of danger and intrigue. She could hear the distant hum of electronic music mixed with the clashing of alien instruments, a haunting melody that echoed through the streets. As she neared the entrance, a sleek hovercar glided past her with speed and precision, its windows tinted darkly to hide any passengers. A chill ran down her spine, reminding her of the encounter with the blue-skinned predator. The car had been heading straight toward the hall, likely carrying someone equally as dangerous. Inside the hall, the grandeur was overwhelming. Intricate designs carved into the walls, flickering lanterns casting shadows that danced across the floor. Aria felt eyes on her from every corner, each pair seeming to hold secrets waiting to be unveiled. The crowd was a mix of beings with various forms and expressions, from the sleek, graceful dragon woman who had invited her to the towering figure that seemed to cast a shadow over everyone else, likely the source of her warning. Aria made her way through the throng, weaving between dancers and chattering aliens. She found herself drawn to an area set aside for a dance floor, where the music reached its crescendo, enveloping everything in a whirlwind of rhythm and color. The atmosphere was electric, charged with anticipation and mystery. Everyone seemed to be waiting for something to happen. As she stepped onto the dance floor, a figure moved gracefully toward her from the shadows. It was the dragon woman, eyes burning as if lit by internal fire, her presence commanding attention. She reached out and took Aria's hand in a smooth, practiced motion, pulling her into the heart of the crowd. The music became louder, pulsating through the floorboards and into their bones. The dragon woman's movements were fluid and precise, a masterful dance of grace and power. Despite the chaos around them, she led Aria with an unspoken understanding that seemed to transcend language and species. Suddenly, the music stopped as abruptly as it had begun, leaving the crowd silent in stunned surprise. The dragon woman turned to face Aria, her eyes boring into hers with a piercing intensity. "You're not just here for the dance," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sudden silence. Aria felt an icy hand grip her heart as realization dawned. Whatever this was, whatever they were about to encounter, was more than entertainment. It was a challenge, a test, and Aria had no idea what lay ahead. The dragon woman's gaze softened slightly. "You have potential," she continued, her voice still low, "but you need protection." Before Aria could respond, the dragon woman disappeared again, swallowed by the crowd. The music resumed, but everything felt different, no more urgent, more dangerous. Panic fluttered through Aria's chest as she realized the extent of the risk she had taken. She needed to find answers. She needed to understand who was orchestrating this elaborate dance and why she had been chosen. But she also needed to survive the night. As the crowd began to swirl around her, Aria knew that every step forward would reveal a little more about the mystery, or perhaps plunge her deeper into it. There was no turning back now. She had to find out what awaited at midnight and whether it could be stopped. But as she started moving through the crowd once again, seeking clues or allies in this alien city, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was always watching her, waiting for the right moment to make its move. The night was young, but Aria's survival instincts were already screaming at her to be wary and prepared for any scenario. She would have to navigate through the shadows and secrets of Rellora Prime if she wanted to outsmart those who wanted her dead, or worse, controlled. And the dance was only just beginning. As the clock inched closer to midnight, Aria's heart pounded in her chest, each second ticking away like a countdown to an explosion. The crowd around her seemed to shift subtly, as if the dancers knew what was about to happen and were preparing themselves mentally and physically for it. She couldn't help but feel that something momentous was about to occur, a revelation or a confrontation that would change everything. Suddenly, the music slowed to a near halt, leaving only the occasional pulse of rhythm in the air, like a drumbeat of anticipation. The dancers paused, their bodies still and eyes focused, as if waiting for some unseen signal. Aria's gaze darted across the room, searching for any sign of what might be coming next. Then, it happened. A ripple of movement began in one corner of the room. At first, it was barely noticeable, a few figures stepping out of the shadows, but soon the entire room erupted into motion. Aria could see that the dancers were performing in unison, their movements synchronized, as if they were part of some complex choreography. But there was something ominous about the way they moved, something calculated and deliberate. The dragon woman reappeared, moving with the grace of a predator hunting its prey. She cut through the crowd with ease, her eyes never leaving Aria's face. As she approached, she slipped an arm around Aria's waist, pulling her into a tight embrace that sent shivers down Aria's spine. The dragon woman's breath was hot against her ear as she whispered, "They are waiting for you to make your move." Before Aria could process the words, the dragon woman released her and stepped head back, her gaze hardening. "You know what happens next," she said, her voice a sharp reminder. Aria's mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle of what was unfolding. The dancers around them were closing in, their movements becoming more aggressive. She felt eyes on her from every angle, some curious, others threatening. The air crackled with tension and hidden motives. The dragon woman's words echoed in her head, "They are waiting for you to make your move." Aria needed to figure out what that meant before she could decide how to react. But the pressure was building, time was running out. She turned to face the crowd, her heart pounding in her chest as she tried to discern who among them might be friend or foe. The dragon woman was gone again, leaving Aria alone with the ominous feeling that tonight's dance was far more than just entertainment. It was a challenge, and one she couldn't afford to ignore. With each passing moment, the stakes grew higher. Every dancer seemed to hold secrets and dangers lurking beneath their polished performances. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, Aria knew she had to act, had to find out why she was here and what her role in this intricate dance of power and secrecy was meant to be. The room held its breath as the music crescendoed once more. The dancers around her began to move with a new intensity, their steps precise and deadly. Aria's heart raced as she realized that whatever awaited her at midnight would determine her fate, and perhaps much more. As the final moments of the countdown ticked away, Aria took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. She needed answers. She needed to understand why these enigmatic figures wanted her involved, and what it meant for her future. But before she could uncover the truth, she had to survive the night's deadly dance. And in that instant, just as midnight struck, Aria felt the world shift beneath her feet, pulling her into the heart of an unfolding mystery that would change everything. The music hit a crescendo, and the dancers moved with a force that sent shivers through Aria, as Koresh was about to discover what awaited beyond the curtain of shadows. The dance floor transformed into a chaotic battlefield as the music intensified, pounding like drums of war in her ears. Aria's eyes darted from one dancer to another, searching for any sign of an ally or a clue. The dragon woman had vanished again, leaving Aria alone to face whatever awaited her. Each second ticked away like a countdown, and she felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on her. Suddenly, a figure moved out of the shadows, his form blending seamlessly with the crowd, but his presence unmistakable. It was the blue-skinned predator from earlier, his eyes narrowing as he locked onto Aria's gaze. He stepped forward, his movement almost hypnotic, and she knew without a doubt that his intentions were not friendly. "Still thinking about joining the dance?" His voice was low and menacing, as if daring her to resist. Aria took a defensive stance, her instincts telling her to be ready for anything. "What do you want now?" she snapped back, trying to mask her fear with defiance. The predator's grin widened, revealing sharp teeth. "You're smart," he said, almost admiringly, "but not smart enough." Before Aria could react, another figure moved between them. Dragon woman, stepping out of the shadows like a shadow boxer, her eyes burning with an intensity that could pierce through steel. "Back off," she growled at the predator, her voice commanding and unyielding. "She's mine." The predator blinked in surprise before his expression hardened. "You're too late," he snarled, turning to face Aria again. "Stay out of this, dragon." But the dragon woman didn't back down. Instead, she moved closer to Aria, pulling her into a protective embrace. The predator's eyes flashed with anger, but he hesitated, as if contemplating his next move. "Move," the dragon woman said calmly but firmly, holding Aria close and staring down the predator with an unflinching gaze. "This is my dance." The crowd around them shifted subtly, creating a space between the three figures. Tension filled the air, thick and palpable. Aria felt the dragon woman's grip tighten slightly, her breath steady against Aria's neck, a silent reassurance that she would protect her. "Let's get this over with," the predator finally growled, turning away from them and moving toward the center of the dance floor. The crowd parted like water as he approached, his presence casting a dark shadow over everything around him. Aria felt the dragon woman's hand slip into hers, interlocking their fingers with a surprising warmth. "Stay close," the dragon woman murmured, her voice a whisper in Aria's ear, but the words were clear and directive. "We'll handle this together." Reluctantly, Aria nodded, her heart pounding in her chest as she realized that she was now part of something larger than herself, part of this mystery, this dance of power and danger. But why? What made her worth so much attention from these enigmatic figures? As the predator reached the center of the dance floor, he began to perform a series of intricate movements that sent shivers down Aria's spine. They were not just dance steps, but a deadly martial art hidden in the rhythm. The dragon woman watched him with keen eyes, her gaze sharp and focused. "Ready?" the dragon woman asked quietly, glancing at Aria one more time before turning her full attention back to the predator. Aria swallowed hard, her mind racing. She had no idea what she was getting into, but she knew she couldn't turn away, no, not with the predator's threat still hanging over them, and the crowd's anticipation building around them like a storm cloud. "Ready," she said softly, her voice steady despite the fear knotting in her stomach. The dragon woman gave a slight nod, her eyes gleaming with a fierce determination. "Then let's show him that not everything is as it seems." With those words, they stepped forward, joining the predator on the dance floor. As the music reached its peak, the crowd surged around them, creating a whirlwind of movement and energy. Aria felt the dragon woman's hand tighten in hers as they began to move in unison with the predator, each step precise and measured, each turn calculated and powerful. The dance was not just a battle of strength, it was a test of skill and resilience. The predator moved with fluid grace, his steps lethal and precise, but the dragon woman matched him step for step, her movements elegant yet fierce, as if she were crafted from the very essence of danger itself. Aria found herself moving alongside them, her own skills honed through years of combat training in various venues and systems across the galaxy. But even so, there was something about tonight that felt different, something deeper and more primal, a challenge not just of physical prowess, but of will and determination. The crowd watched them with rapt attention, some murmuring among themselves, as if they understood the deeper meaning behind the dance. Aria could see their face a mix of fascination and fear, and knew that whatever was happening here went beyond entertainment. It was a ritual, a test. With every step, the tension in the room increased, reaching a fever pitch as the predators and dragons moved in perfect synchronicity, each strike and parry telling a story of struggle and defiance. The predator's movements grew more aggressive, his eyes burning with a fierce intensity. But the dragon woman remained calm, her actions measured and controlled, guiding Aria through the intricate choreography like a master guiding an apprentice. "Watch," the dragon woman murmured as they approached a critical moment in the dance. With their movements, the dragon woman's movements were fluid and graceful, her scales catching the light as she turned in circles, leading Aria through the dance with precision. Every twist and turn had purpose, every step was practiced perfection. As they moved together, Aria felt a strange connection forming, an unspoken understanding that transcended language. "Your feet must be light as a feather," the dragon woman instructed, her voice soft yet commanding. "We are not just dancing, we are telling a story of our people's past and future." Aria nodded, focusing all her attention on the steps. The air around them thrummed with an energy she couldn't quite place, a mix of anticipation and something more primal. Suddenly, the dragon woman stopped mid-step, her eyes narrowing slightly as she listened. Aria followed suit, straining to hear any sounds beyond the usual wind and rustling leaves. Nothing seemed out of place, yet there was a tension in the air that made her skin crawl. "Someone's watching us," the dragon woman murmured, her voice low and urgent. "We must finish this now." Aria felt a surge of adrenaline as they began dancing again at an accelerated pace, each step becoming more urgent and dangerous. The movements grew more complex, weaving in and out of ancient symbols etched into the stone walls. Each symbol held meaning, secrets that Aria didn't understand but felt deeply. "We are performing our oldest ritual," the dragon woman explained through gritted teeth. "We must finish it before she could finish her sentence. A bolt of lightning crackled through the air, illuminating the cavernous room in stark light and shadow. Aria had gasped as the source became clear. A figure cloaked in darkness stood near the far wall, eyes glowing like embers against the night. The figure was unmistakably human, but carried an otherworldly aura that chilled her to the bone. "Who is it?" Aria whispered, her voice shaking slightly despite her best efforts to stay calm. The dragon woman's response was clipped and sharp. "It does not matter who they are or what they want. Finish this dance with me." Aria nodded, her heart pounding in her chest as she matched the dragon woman's steps, each movement more fluid than the last. They were almost at the end of the ritual sequence, when the figure in the shadows moved, throwing a sharp object towards them. Time seemed to slow as Aria watched the blur of metal flying towards her. With a swift motion, the dragon woman pushed her out of harm's way, but not before Aria felt the cold tip of the blade graze her cheek. "Stay behind me," the dragon woman hissed. "Finish the dance." With a surge of determination, Aria focused on the steps, pushing all fear aside as she and the dragon woman completed the final movements of the ritual. As they finished, a blinding flash of light enveloped them, momentarily disorienting both dancers. When Aria, his vision cleared, she saw that the cloaked figure was gone, vanished into thin air as if it had never been there at all. But the tension did not ease. Instead, it deepened as the dragon woman's eyes bored into hers with a mixture of concern and warning. "We have to leave," she said firmly, her voice devoid of its usual calmness. "They've come too close this time." Aria felt a chill down her spine as they began to make their way through the darkened cavern, the urgency in the dragon woman's movements palpable. Questions swirled through Aria's mind. Who were these shadowy watchers? Why had they interrupted them? And what did completing the ritual mean? But now was not the time for questions. They needed to get out of this place quickly before more trouble found them. Aria followed closely behind the dragon woman, her every sense on high alert as they navigated the treacherous terrain. The deeper they went, the more ominous the atmosphere became. The cavern walls seemed to close in around them, shadows whispering secrets and threats in the darkness. Aria I could feel eyes watching them from the periphery, eyes that belonged to something far more sinister than any human or dragon she had ever encountered before. As they finally emerged into the open air of the forest outside, Aria felt a wave of relief wash over her. But it was short-lived, for danger lay in waiting beyond the trees. The sky was dark and stormy, a fitting backdrop for the turmoil that gripped Aria's heart. In the distance, she could see the silhouette of an imposing stone structure, the heart of their enemy's stronghold. The dragon woman moved towards it with purpose, her steps steady despite the gathering threat. "We must take this directly to them," she said grimly. "We cannot allow them to know what we know." Aria's resolve hardened. She followed the dragon woman into the heart of the storm, determined not to let fear dictate their next move. The ritual had been completed, but it had only begun a new chapter filled with even greater risk and peril. The stronghold loomed before them like an ancient sentinel, its stone walls weathered by time, but still formidable. As they approached the grand doors, Aria could feel the weight of the Watcher's presence lingering in the air, a constant reminder that they were playing a dangerous game with high stakes. The dragon woman led them inside without hesitation, her movements sure and controlled despite the growing tension. Aria felt a mix of fear and awe as they entered the grand hall. It was a place of power and authority, where decisions that affected countless lives were made daily. But tonight, there would be no decorum or politeness. Tonight, it would be a fight for survival. The dragon woman stopped abruptly at the base of a towering staircase leading to a balcony filled with figures in regal attire. Aria felt her breath catch as she realized who these people were: the leaders of the faction that had been pursuing them all along. They wore expressions of calculated malice, their eyes narrowing as they took in the sight of the dragon woman and Aria. "Is everything prepared?" the dragon woman asked coldly, her voice carrying a lethal edge. A figure stepped forward from the balcony, tall and imposing, his presence commanding even in the midst of the chaos. "We have scouts on the perimeter," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "They will be here soon." The dragon woman's eyes narrowed further. "That means you've been monitoring us all along." There was a moment of tension as the two factions stared each other down, the air crackling with potential violence. But before any conflict could erupt, another figure descended the stairs, one that sent Aria's heart racing in recognition. "Drake," she whispered, her voice betraying her shock and concern. Drake's eyes flickered between Aria and the dragon woman, his expression a mix of anger and confusion. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his voice laced with disbelief. The dragon woman stepped forward, her movements fluid yet fierce. "We completed it," she said, her voice echoing in the hall. "The ritual is done." Aria felt a cold dread settle in her stomach as the implications of those words sank in. Completing the ritual meant something far more significant than just mastering a dance or telling a story. It was the beginning of something catastrophic. "Let me explain," Drake began, his voice softer now. "There's been a mistake." But before he could say more, the dragon woman cut him off with a sharp motion. "No time for explanations," she said grimly. "We need to act now." Aria felt a surge of urgency. Whatever was happening here, it could not wait. The stakes were too high, and the danger too great to waste any time on diplomacy or misunderstandings. The dragon woman turned back to Aria, her eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that spoke volumes. "Trust me," she said quietly. "We must complete what we started." Aria's resolve hardened despite the danger and uncertainty. She knew she had to trust the dragon woman. This much was clear from the bond they had forged through their shared struggle. With a nod, Aria followed the dragon woman up the stairs, the tension in the air thickening with every step. As they reached the balcony, Aria looked back at Drake for one last moment. His eyes pleaded silently for understanding, but there was no time to delve into the complex emotions and history between them now. They needed to act swiftly, and Aria knew she had to be by the dragon woman's side no matter the cost. The balcony offered a vantage point of the entire hall below, its grandeur stark against the looming threat. Aria could see the leaders gathered in murmured discussion, their eyes darting towards her and the dragon woman with wary suspicion. The dragon woman moved towards a large window at the far end, pulling back the heavy curtain to reveal a view of the storm-laden night sky. "We can't allow them to know what we do," she said softly, almost to herself. "The ritual's completion holds power they can't yet understand." Aria's mind raced as she tried to piece together the fragmented information and clues. The ritual, it must have been a key to something greater, a doorway into understanding their true purpose here. But what exactly had they completed? What did Drake mean by there being a mistake? As if reading her thoughts, the dragon woman turned back to her with an intense gaze. "We've done everything we can for now," she said firmly. "Our only option is to protect our knowledge and continue this journey together." Aria nodded, her heart heavy but determined. "What's next?" The dragon woman's expression softened slightly before hardening into resolve. "We need to find a way out of here and regroup somewhere safe," she replied. "And we need to gather more allies, people who understand the gravity of what's at stake." Aria felt a shiver run down her spine as the full weight of their mission hit her. They were not just dancers performing an ancient ritual, they were guardians of something far greater, something that could alter the course of their world forever. But just as she was about to voice her thoughts on this new direction, a sudden commotion from below caught their attention. Figures in dark armor were making their way through the hall, their purpose clear. They were searching for them. "The perimeter scouts," the dragon woman whispered, her eyes narrowing. "We need to act now." Without hesitation, Aria followed the dragon woman towards a hidden door set into one of the walls, a secret passage leading deeper into the stronghold's maze-like structure. As they moved through the narrow corridor, Aria felt the tension mounting with every step. They emerged in a smaller section of the stronghold, a place filled with lesser-known figures, guards, and messengers who were unaware of the grander schemes being played out above them. The dragon woman led them to one such figure, a young guard who had seen them enter but seemed oblivious to their true purpose. "We need your help," the dragon woman said urgently, her voice carrying a quiet authority that made the guard hesitate only briefly before nodding. "What do you need?" the guard asked, his eyes darting around nervously. "Lead us to the escape route," the dragon woman replied firmly. "We must leave this place immediately." The guard hesitated for another moment before reaching into his pouch and producing a key. "This is the only way out," he said, handing over the key with a grave nod. "But hurry, they'll be here soon." With no time to waste, Aria followed the dragon woman through the escape route, a narrow passage that twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the heart of the stronghold's hidden depths. Each twist brought them closer to their goal, but also drew them deeper into danger. As they emerged into another section of the stronghold, one filled with storage and lesser-used rooms, Aria could see the figures of their pursuers closing in, a small band of warriors who had clearly been sent to apprehend them. The dragon woman's eyes gleamed with determination as she pushed Aria forward towards a smaller door set into the wall. "Into there," she said firmly, her voice low and urgent. Aria nodded and rushed through the doorway, finding herself in a small, cluttered room filled with various items, supplies for the stronghold's maintenance crew. The dragon woman followed closely behind, her eyes scanning the room for any immediate threats. "We must move quickly," she said, her voice strained. "They'll find us soon." Aria nodded, her mind racing as she tried to think of a way out. But before she could even begin to formulate a plan, a sudden flash of light caught their attention, an airlock door opening to reveal a small transport vehicle, its engines humming quietly. "We have no choice," the dragon woman said grimly. "We must take this and leave now." With no time for further debate, Aria followed the dragon woman into the transport vehicle, her heart pounding in her chest as they closed the door behind them. The engines revved to life with a low growl, and the vehicle began to move, sliding through hidden passages until it emerged from an underground entrance onto the stormy night air outside. But their relief was short-lived as they saw dark figures converging on their location, the ones who had been following them all along. Aria felt her heart drop as she realized the gravity of their situation. They were being pursued by forces far more powerful than they could ever have imagined. "We can't let them catch us," the dragon woman said grimly, her fingers reaching for some control console on the vehicle's dashboard. "We need to get far from here." Aria nodded, her mind racing as she tried to think of a way to help. But before she could do anything, the dragon woman pulled up a holographic map and inputted coordinates with practiced precision. "Head northeast," she said firmly to the transport's automated navigation system. "We need to get to the ancient ruins. That's our best chance for safety." The vehicle lurched forward, its speed increasing rapidly as it shot into the stormy night sky. Aria felt a surge of fear and adrenaline as they rocketed through the darkness towards their uncertain destination. She could see flashes of pursuit from behind, the relentless figures closing in with terrifying determination. But even as they faced this new peril, Aria felt a strange sense of clarity wash over her. The bond she had formed with the dragon woman, the deep connection forged through shared struggle and danger, gave her an unwavering resolve to see this mission through to its conclusion. She was no longer just a human, she was part of something greater. As they hurtled towards the ancient ruins, the tension and stakes only grew higher. Aria knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, bound by their shared destiny and the unbreakable bond forged through the dance of fate. The transport vehicle cut through the night sky at breakneck speed, its engines humming a low warning as they hurtled towards the ancient ruins far to the northeast. The storm raged around them, lightning illuminating the dark clouds in stark, jagged patterns that cast eerie shadows on the landscape below. Aria clung to her seat, her heart pounding in her chest as she looked out at the rapidly approaching ruins, sprawling edifices of stone and shadow that loomed like ancient giants against the stormy sky. The dragon woman stood beside her, her movements steady despite the chaos around them. Her eyes never left the holographic map displayed before them, a network of winding routes leading to their destination. "We're almost there," she said firmly, her voice cutting through Aria's racing thoughts. "We need to plan our next move carefully." Aria nodded, her mind whirling with questions and possibilities. The dragon woman was right, they needed to be prepared for whatever lay ahead. But even as they approached the ruins, a new source of tension began to grow within her. "There's something else," Aria said, her voice low but urgent. "We have to understand why Drake was here. What did he mean about the mistake?" The dragon woman's expression softened slightly, but it was fleeting, replaced by an intensity that spoke volumes. "That is not for now," she said firmly. "What's important is what we know and what we need to do next." Aria felt a pang of frustration. She needed answers, clarity, amidst the chaos. But even as these thoughts swirled through her mind, the transport vehicle broke through the last of the clouds, revealing the ruins in all their ancient glory. The sight was both awe-inspiring and chilling, towering stone structures with intricate carvings that spoke of forgotten history and power. Aria could feel a sense of reverence mingling with dread as they approached the heart of these ruins, a central courtyard filled with strange symbols and markings etched into the ground. "We must tread carefully here," the dragon woman said, her voice carrying an unspoken weight of importance. "These places hold ancient secrets." Aria nodded, her senses heightened as they stepped out of the vehicle and into the heart of the ruins. The air felt charged with power, a sense of something dormant waiting to be awakened. They moved with purpose across the courtyard, their footsteps echoing against the stone. As they approached the central structure, a towering obelisk surrounded by intricate carvings, Aria I could see figures moving within guards and enforcers who had clearly anticipated their arrival. The dragon woman's eyes narrowed as she assessed the situation, her movements steady but urgent. "We need to find the chamber," she said firmly, leading them through a winding path that led deeper into the heart of the ruins. "The ritual's completion holds power here. We must protect it at all costs." Aria followed closely behind, her mind racing as she tried to understand the significance of their actions. The obelisk loomed before them, its carvings glowing faintly in the dim light. As they approached, Aria could feel a strange energy emanating from it, an aura that seemed to draw them in. "Wait here," the dragon woman said quietly, her eyes narrowing as she stepped closer to the obelisk. She reached out with one hand, running her fingers over the carvings etched into the stone. Aria watched, her heart pounding as she saw the dragon woman's fingers glow faintly, an aura of power resonating from her touch. "What are you doing?" Aria asked, her voice trembling slightly despite her best efforts to stay calm. "Awakening it," the dragon woman replied, her voice low and intense. "This is the key to our next step." Aria felt a shiver run down her spine as the carvings on the obelisk began to glow with increasing intensity, a radiant light that illuminated the surrounding courtyard in an ethereal glow. As the dragon woman's fingers glided over the final rune, the obelisk suddenly emitted a burst of energy, a shockwave that reverberated through the air and ground beneath their feet. "What just happened?" Aria asked, her eyes wide with astonishment. The dragon woman turned to her, her expression serious. "We have awakened an ancient power," she said firmly. "It's time for our next move." As the full weight of this revelation settled in, Aria felt a surge of determination mixed with fear. The bond between them was deeper than she had realized, forged not just through shared danger, but by a connection to something far greater. But before they could delve further into these thoughts, a sudden commotion drew their attention back towards the entrance of the courtyard, figures converging in the distance, closing in on them with relentless speed. Aria felt her heart drop as she realized the gravity of their situation. They were still being pursued. "We need to act now," the dragon woman said firmly, her eyes narrowing with determination. "We can't let them find us here." Aria nodded, her mind racing as she tried to think of a way to protect this newfound power. But before she could even begin to formulate a plan, the dragon woman moved quickly, leading them through a series of narrow passages hidden within the ruins. "We must reach the chamber," she said urgently. "It's our only chance." As they navigated these hidden paths, Aria felt a sense of urgency mixed with dread. The danger was growing by the moment, but so too was their resolve. They were guardians now, protectors of an ancient power that could shift the balance of everything. But just as they emerged into a larger chamber filled with strange artifacts and glowing runes, a sudden shadow fell across them, figures converging from all sides, their expressions dark and determined. Aria felt her heart drop as she realized the full extent of their peril. They were surrounded by enemies who could not be underestimated. "We have no choice," the dragon woman said grimly, her voice cutting. Aria felt her heart drop as she realized the full extent of their peril. They were surrounded by enemies who could not be underestimated. The forest, once a haven of tranquility, now echoed with the ominous sounds of approaching feet. Aria turned to Dre, his eyes meeting hers with a silent understanding. "We can't fight them all," he whispered, his grip on her hand tightening. "I know," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking louder might draw their foes nearer. "But we need to find another way out of this." Dre nodded grimly. He had always been her rock in the storm, but now there was a deep uncertainty etched into his features. They had ventured far into alien territory, seeking answers to questions that tormented them from worlds away. Now, as the shadows closed in around them, Aria knew they had to do more than just survive. They needed to find a way back. They moved cautiously, heartbeats echoing like a drumroll, each breath a silent prayer. The terrain shifted from dense underbrush to jagged rocks and deep ravines. The ground seemed to move underfoot, as though alive with the tension of their situation. Aria's mind raced, considering every possible escape route. She needed to find a way to outsmart their pursuers, for fighting was not an option. Suddenly, Dre's grip on her hand slipped. He had stopped in his tracks, a faraway look in his eyes. "What is it?" she asked, her heart pounding. He pointed silently ahead, and Aria followed his gaze. Through the thick foliage, she could make out movements, swift, fluid shadows that were undoubtedly the enemy. They were too close, and there was no cover. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but she forced herself to focus. "Dre," she said urgently, tugging on his hand. "We need to." He cut her off with a sharp motion, signaling for her to stay silent and still. His eyes flicked nervously between the enemy's direction and something further ahead in the densest part of the forest, a narrow path that seemed to wind between towering trees, shrouded in shadow and thick underbrush. She nodded once, understanding the risk they were taking. It was either that or face capture, or worse, be the pursuing forces. With a deep breath, Aria followed Dre into the heart of darkness. The path twisted and turned, narrow enough to barely allow them passage side by side. Roots reached out from the ground like grasping fingers, tripping them at every turn. Leaves dripped moisture onto their shoulders in an unrelenting drizzle. Each step seemed amplified, each rustle of leaves making Aria's breath hitch in her throat. "Why aren't they coming after us?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Dre shook his head. "They may have thought we'd retreat to safety. They are likely following a different path." Aria's heart clenched at the thought of being cornered. "Or they are just playing a game," she muttered darkly. "I don't think they are that cruel," Dre reassured her, but his tone didn't quite ring true. The possibility lingered like an unspoken threat, gnawing at the edges of their resolve. They pushed deeper into the heart of the forest, the path narrowing until it became more of a treacherous crevice, barely wide enough for them to squeeze through. Roots and vines tangled around their legs, making every step a struggle. Dre's hand was all that grounded her amidst the chaos. She clung to him with a desperation that had nothing to do with physical strength. As they emerged from the narrow passage, Aria's heart leapt in hope. The path widened slightly, and ahead, there was an opening between the trees, a possible exit from the encroaching darkness. But as she gazed beyond the trees, her breath caught. In the clearing was a small pond, surrounded by tall grass and dotted with wild flowers that seemed out of place amidst the tension. "Look," Dre murmured beside her, his eyes reflecting the same mix of hope and fear. "There might be another way." Aria nodded, swallowing hard. The enemy couldn't know about this route. It was too far off their usual paths. That didn't mean they were safe yet. They had to be quick. "Dre," she whispered urgently, her voice trembling slightly. "Do you think we can make it?" "We have to try," he replied, his tone grim but resolute. With one final look at each other, they stepped into the clearing, the tension of their surroundings momentarily lifting as they neared the pond. The water shimmered invitingly, its surface undisturbed by any hint of danger. As Aria moved toward it, a sense of surreal beauty enveloped here, a stark contrast to the peril that surrounded them. "Follow me," Dre said softly, his hand grasping hers tightly once more. She felt the rough texture of his skin against hers, the calluses worn from countless battles and treks through unforgiving terrain. It grounded her, reminding her of why they were fighting. They moved along the edge of the pond, stepping carefully over stones that jutted out from the ground, avoiding the water's edge where it seemed too deep or too swift. Just as Aria thought they had reached a point of relief, a new challenge presented itself, a steep embankment leading up to an elevated path that wound through the trees above. "We have to go up," Dre stated firmly, his eyes scanning their surroundings for any sign of pursuit. Aria nodded, feeling her muscles already tighten in preparation for the climb. She reached for Dre's hand again, finding solace in his strength as they moved forward together. The embankment was treacherous, the footing unstable, but somehow, through sheer willpower and determination, they made it to the top. Breathless and heart-pounding, Aria glanced back just in time to see their pursuers hesitating on the other side of the pond, assessing their next move. She felt a rush of triumph mixed with a sharp sense of vulnerability. They had outmaneuvered the enemy temporarily, but the danger was far from over. "Come on," Dre urged, his voice low and urgent as he led her further along the elevated path, which now offered them a clearer view of their surroundings. The landscape stretched ahead, dotted with patches of sunlight filtering through gaps in the dense canopy. "We need to keep moving," Aria said, glancing back towards the pond once more before following Dre's lead. "They won't give up." "Then neither will we," he replied, his hand still gripping hers with unspoken reassurance. As they continued along the path, the tension began to build again, each step bringing them closer to a new set of challenges. But there was also a strange sense of calm settling over Aria. It wasn't fear so much as determination. She had known from the start that their journey would be fraught with danger, but she also knew that Dre's unwavering support was her anchor. They eventually came upon a steep ravine that cut across their path, creating a barrier seemingly impassable. Aria could hear the distant sound of their pursuers' steps growing louder. Panic flared up again, but it was short-lived as something else seized her heart. "There's a way down there," Dre said, pointing towards a narrow crack in the rock face that seemed to extend into the depths of the ravine. "It leads to another path, if we can manage it." "Let's go," Aria said, her voice steady but her heart pounding with renewed urgency. With no time to waste, they made their way towards the crevice. Dre led the way down a precarious slope, his movements sure and quick. Aria followed closely behind him, her mind racing as she sought to memorize each step, each foothold in case their path grew even more treacherous. They slid and climbed, using tree roots and rocks for leverage where possible. The ground was slick with moisture from recent rains, making every movement a calculated risk. Aria could feel the cold sweat on her palms as they gripped onto anything solid, her heart racing both with fear and with the adrenaline of the situation. But there was also a strange, almost electric awareness of Dre beside her, his presence grounding her even in moments of pure chaos. At one point, she stumbled, a rock shifting beneath her feet and nearly sending her tumbling down the steep face. Dre's hands were there immediately, grasping her arm to steady her, his breath heavy with exertion as he pulled her back to her feet. "We can't stop," he whispered, his voice fierce but tinged with concern for her well-being. "I know," she replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Let's keep going." And so they did, pushing forward through narrow crevices and over jagged rocks that threatened to tear their clothes and skin with each step. The ground was uneven and slippery, and Aria knew that one misstep could send them plummeting down into the ravine below. Suddenly, as they emerged from a particularly tight passage in the rock face, the terrain shifted dramatically. Ahead lay an open expanse of jagged cliffs and sheer drop-offs, the path narrowing to a series of precarious ledges and overhangs that seemed barely safe enough to hold them. "This is it," Dre said quietly, his voice almost reverent as he stepped out onto the first ledge. "Well, either make it or we won't." Aria nodded, her heart hammering in her chest, but she moved forward beside him without hesitation. They had no choice. Turning back was impossible. The only way forward was through this perilous route. As they navigated the treacherous path, Aria felt Dre's breath brush against her neck, a gentle, almost imperceptible touch that sent shivers down her spine despite the danger surrounding them. It was a moment of shared vulnerability, a reminder of the bond they had forged through countless trials and tribulations. They moved in near silence, each step a calculated risk, each glance a silent understanding. Aria could feel his strength pulling her through moments of doubt, and in turn, she offered him what she could: her own strength, her own determination. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they reached the end of the treacherous path, finding themselves on solid ground once more. The danger had not yet abated, but there was a sense of victory in simply surviving this far. Ahead, they could see a familiar landmark, an ancient tree that marked the boundary of the enemy's territory. "We're almost out," Dre said, his voice steady but filled with a palpable sense of relief. Aria nodded, her heart heavy with the knowledge that their trials were far from over. But there was also a strange sense of peace settling over her. They had faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. As they approached the ancient tree, the sounds of their pursuers grew fainter, the forest around them calming into a semblance of normalcy. Aria felt Dre's hand tighten on hers once more, a simple gesture that spoke volumes about their bond and shared resolve. "Do you think we'll ever be safe?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with weariness, but also hope. "We will," Dre replied, his gaze steady and unwavering, "as long as we have each other." In that moment, there was no need for more words. The simple truth of their bond, forged in the crucible of danger and shared struggle, spoke louder than any declaration of love ever could. They had faced their fears together, and though the journey ahead remained uncertain, they moved forward with a newfound sense of strength. As the first rays of dawn peeked through the canopy, casting a golden light across the forest floor, Aria turned to Dre. His eyes reflected the same unspoken promise of hope, of perseverance, of each other. In that moment, everything felt right. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the dusty road, yet there was a warmth in the air that felt almost tangible. It was a day where colors bled into one another, and the world seemed to slow down, wrapping them in a cocoon of serene stillness. In this quiet moment, they stood side by side, their fingers brushing against each other without any conscious effort, as if drawn together by an unseen force. The sky above was a canvas of pinks and oranges, with wisps of purple starting to make their way across the horizon. He turned to her then, his eyes locking onto hers, and for a second, time seemed to hold its breath. She could see the depth of his emotions reflected in the rich blue of his irises, and in that instant, she knew exactly what she needed to say. "Let's make this our moment," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rustle of leaves and distant chorus of birds settling for the night. It was a simple statement, one that required no explanation or justification, for both of them understood the gravity of the words. They stood there as the world transitioned from day to night, holding on to this fleeting instant, cherishing its simplicity and purity. The stars began to twinkle, each one a promise of what was yet to come, and they knew that within this vast expanse, their paths were destined to intertwine, no matter what challenges lay ahead. In this moment of perfect synchronicity, everything felt right, and nothing else mattered.